Governor Mills will deliver her State of the State address tomorrow night, but in a different way than years past. Instead of covering all the issues in one speech, Mills says she will first deliver a written State of the State tomorrow morning to lawmakers. We're told the written address will be about Maine's budget outlook and feature the governor's proposed policy initiatives to address things like affordable housing, child safety, and the opioid epidemic. The second part of the State of the State will be a traditional speech delivered to a joint session of the legislature at 7 at night. Governor's speech will focus on crisis Maine has faced, including the Lewiston shooting and the impacts of recent severe storms. You can watch the governor's address on our website tomorrow night.